you have to have every role being played. There's somebody that people boo at, there's a villain. Some people laugh at, comedic element. Some people is the hero, and then the heroine. For some perverse reason, the hero is a woman dressed up like that, and the pantomime dame is a man dressed up like that. See? So there are standard elements. There has to be a chorus. There has to be scenery. There has to be some kind of loose plot. And there has to be an audience. All these elements come together as a drama. If we take this world as a lila, as a divine play, then obviously we have to boo and hiss at the villain. So there has to be a balance between what is socially harmonic and peaceful, and act according to that, and react according to that, with an even-mindedness that says it's all the Lord dressed up like that, playing these parts. There's a philosophy behind this ahimsa. Ahimsa is very, very sattvic value. So as far as we possibly can, we practice it. But the whole starting point of the Bhagavad Gita is Krishna saying, please do your duty and engage in this, just as a policeman has to pay a duty. Otherwise society is in disarray. And when you're under attack, you have to defend yourself. So there are certain things that have to be done inevitably. And so non-injury is a very high ideal. And the ideal and the practical have to match up as best they can. In every ideal situation, ideal implies perfect situation, perfect scenario. Is there such a thing? We are, as a galaxy, Milky Way galaxy, headed for a collision with Andromeda. It's a violent thing. And so religion takes into account this, that with this creation, there's inevitably a destruction or a dissolution of it. You can't have one without the other. You can't have good without evil. You can't have virtue without vice. You can't have plus without minus. You can't have electron without positron. These things are arranged in pairs, and the interaction between these pairs make the world that we live in. And the contrast is valuable to us, encouraging us now to consciously, and man is the only person that can do it, consciously go and do something which is noble, which is pure, which is right, which has no survival of the fittest involved in it, no struggle involved in it, nothing to do with what Darwin exhibited as the basic laws of evolution. No survival of the fittest. Noble souls with an open heart, loving the entire existence, loving unconditionally. The generosity of spirit that says, let me embrace the whole world and have a spirit of service, not just confined locally to one situation or one kind of survivalist attitude, genetic love, that kind of thing. There's no benefit for survival of the fittest or procreation in any of these noble souls. Otherwise, Jesus would be a magnificent failure. He wasn't interested in procreation, and he wasn't interested in materialism, material things. The Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. So in this way, from an evolutionary point of view, he was a magnificent failure. And yet, his legacy has lasted over 2,000 years. So this is the whole idea, and even in Jesus' life, we'll find these opposites. He tells Peter, get away from me, Satan. Rebukes him in this way. He overturns the commercial money changers in the temple with a whip made from cords, no less. And yet on the other side he says, love your neighbor as yourself. But that's an offshoot, because the first thing is, when asked, what must we do to gain eternal life? Jesus replies, what does the commandments say? Divine commandments. the universal value of ahimsa coming out, whose positive aspect is love. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, all thy soul, all thy mind, all thy strength. The very height in idealism of bhakti. And the second is aligned to it. Love your neighbor as yourself, not just a golden rule. Now you take it philosophically, what is yourself? What is at the bottom of it? It is a divine self. And so love the other person in the same way that you understand this divinity is within me, it's within you, it's everywhere. In that case, without attending to it directly, you'll immediately have a loving attitude and not wish to cause anybody harm in thought, word, or deed. So if you see how is this tapasya arranged, again you can refer to the Bhagavad Gita there. 3 types of tapasya there. So bodily tapasya, and then there's a tapasya of speech. Speech should be sweet, should be kind, should always be loving, should always be positive, joyful, those kinds of things. So the contrary to that is another form of ahimsa. So I brought a Raja Yoga here to see, when it comes to ahimsa, what does Swami Vivekananda say? And his commentary is a compilation of the ancient commentaries, Vyasa, Valmiki's Glass, and so on. So he's bringing out these principles. So by the practice of the different parts of yoga, that is standing for concentration or the means toward it, the impurities being destroyed, knowledge becomes effulgent up to discrimination. Now this practical knowledge, so he sets out these ashtanga, these 8 limbs or 8 steps. And so non-killing comes first, as does therefore truthfulness, non-stealing, etc. Continence, non-receiving. These are all called yam. Non-killing being established in his presence, all enmities cease in others. Commentary: if a man gets the ideal of non-injuring others, before him, even animals which are by their nature ferocious will become peaceful. It's a very interesting approach. Not just a directive. There's some change in the environment as a result of an attitude of non-injury. And the other side of it, don't forget, would be love. If I see in every creature, a creature's nature is either calm or ferocious. We can see that among animals. The great elephant is by nature fairly calm and loving, unless you interfere with it, or there's a rogue elephant or something like that, then it will attack you. It's a dangerous animal by virtue of its size, no doubt. But compared to a lion, fairly docile. Vegetarians may use this as an argument also. So the carnivorous animals are by nature ferocious animals. So before this person who cultivates this non-injury, this ahimsa, even animals which are by their nature ferocious will become peaceful. We have some examples of this, even the human animal. Swami Purnananda was faced with a dilemma where there was a disruption in a certain ashram, and Swami Purnananda, I think it was saying that there's some members who should be dismissed, and he arrives there and doesn't address the issue directly, simply requires people to sit in his presence and meditate with him. And his presence generated a whole atmosphere of peace. A peaceful person will walk with a whole atmosphere of peace around him. Everything will be peaceful. If you're the embodiment of peace, then peace will be some quality that moves with you, shines with you, and has a transforming effect, because all thought has a transforming effect. As soon as you declare peace, 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 the world around you becomes peaceful. And the world around you comprises other people. And places an event, thought is a kind of attractive thing, kind of suction, that draws things toward you. So blessed are the peacemakers, says Jesus. The tiger and the lamb will play together before that yogi, says Vivekananda in his commentary. And when you have come to that state, then alone you will understand that you have become firmly established in non-injuring. So it's a state to be attained. It's not just a mere value, a dogmatic value somewhere, for the sake of it. With an understanding that, morally, it seems a much better thing not to injure anybody. With a golden rule in mind, which is there, no doubt. But there's no depth necessary to a golden rule. Even humanists will have a golden rule. But what does it mean? It doesn't really mean anything unless you say, is there a reason for it? Of course you can manufacture a reason that if we're all good citizens and don't harm anybody and don't steal anything and don't tell lies and so on, then society will be better. But there are occasions when society could be better if you do the contrary. So the Nazis in Germany decided if we weed out all the weak elements in society, then society will be benefited by it. It will be much better thing. If we take all the distorted people, people who are born with mental dysfunctions and so on, and do away with them. They were based on Darwin's natural selection. Well, instead of natural selection, you do it deliberately. If you deliberately breed something, you'll get a race of super people. That was the basis of his Nazi ideals and practices. But nobody here in the 21st century would agree with that. We learned a big lesson. Even atheists such as Richard Dawkins said, you cannot go wrong with those Darwinian ideals. You have to update it. We can't derive our morality from it. Something else is necessary. And why should a person be moral? There must be something that is not in the evolutionary formula. So when you have come to that state, what is that state? That state where non-killing is a natural thing for you, and killing and injuring another becomes anathema to you spontaneously. Then alone you will understand that you have become firmly established in this ideal, in this value of non-injury. And it goes on to truthfulness and so forth, all of those kinds of things. We have to revalue the world constantly. We have to see that all the glories around us are things that we don't take for granted. We understand them as divine glories everywhere. Why should we love God? Because God is lovable. That's the reason. And then when we pick that up and see all the evidences of this glory all around us, then our sense of inner joy, that is contrary to a sense of dissatisfaction. Why do we get annoyed with other people? Annoyance is a form of injury. It's injuring ourselves. So there's that aspect. What about this non-injury of yourself? You think that you're injuring the other person, but the first thought that arises comes onto you. We think that anger is something secret and doesn't affect anybody. Well, the first thing it affects is you. And then it affects others beyond you. We don't know where the border of a magnetic field lies. So we learn to be loving on the basis that we are recipients of love as well. We didn't ask for our food to get digested. It happens. We didn't ask for pocket money called thinking and thought. It's given to us freely. We didn't ask that the heart pumps spontaneously. We didn't ask that we were born in an environment that is conducive to comfortable living. We didn't request, make a daily request for air and oxygen and sunshine, it's delivered to us free of charge. It didn't have to come by DHL. So isn't that the sign of some flowing grace that we should be thankful for? And shouldn't that evoke a feeling of love? And then should we see that presence in and through and as and beyond everything? And will that then make us naturally peaceful people and peace-loving people in every context? Are there any exceptions that you can think of to that? Is there any moral dilemma that this brings? Swami Vivekananda was famous for having been asked a similar question. Should we turn the other cheek as Jesus commanded? And he didn't answer immediately. He paused and thought about it. And then, if my memory serves correctly, he says, yes, but on the second time, give him a blow on the nose. So there's a limit between being sensible and being loving, but we should always never forget the playfulness of the situation. We should never do something from an out of control feeling, from an impulsive anger. So when we take this Mahabharata war and the exhortation that the Lord gives, is he recommending anger? Or is he recommending a balance of social justice and doing what you're designed to do, what your skill set says you should be doing? That's the difference. When Jesus made a cord of whips and drove the commercial people out of the temple, the man who said we should all have self-control and love our neighbor as ourselves, did he violate his own principle? So you see, these great sages, I think I may have told you about Vishwamitra, who was known for losing his cool. But you see, eventually, he was feigning anger. He learned the art of feigning anger in order to get a result. When you control your children, is it out of anger? See, sometimes it might be. If that's the case, then the fault is yours. Or is it to adjust them so that they can become useful citizens of the future? Is it helping them to shape their character? So this is a question you have to ask and answer yourself. There's no moral justification for anger. You hear this phrase, justifiable anger. See? Or righteous indignation. These are various phrases that seem to justify anger. But nothing justifies anger. It's one of the three gates of hell designed, designated in the Bhagavad Gita. See? So there's no excuse for anger. But can we use it in a moral sense? Can we be morally angry and so on and so forth? Yes, we can see the injustice of a situation, and that evokes something in us, but our response should be controlled. Is it controlled? Maybe not, but there's the idea of it. Why should it be so? Why is it like that? It's because the first victim of your anger is you. See, psychologists say, here's how you control anger. Go and dig a big hole in a field somewhere. Then you won't affect anybody. But that's not true. You're affecting yourself. You're cultivating a habit of anger. Nor should you repress it. So what does control mean? You allow the unconscious impulse to come out momentarily with the knowledge that you can stand back as an independent entity and review it, and then evaluate it and make the necessary adjustments, and then make another reaction, until ultimately your final reaction becomes eventually your first reaction. That's the habit that has to be created. So violence is necessary on occasions, when it's well thought out, reasoned, with a sense of maturity. And see Ramakrishna's example of hissing versus biting. That's a very telling parable. Want a story? So once upon a time, a holy man was going through a village, and as he was going on his way, all the villagers, and particularly the village children, said, holy sir, don't go on this path. It's a very dangerous snake, a big cobra. It's known for attacking and biting, so nobody goes on this path. It's terrorizing the whole village, and we can't find it, we can't locate it. And yet, you see, as soon as anybody goes there, a big bite comes. Now, when a cobra bites you, it can be fatal. So, the holy man wasn't afraid, because holy people are not afraid. What's there to be afraid of? If God is in everything and everywhere, no need to be afraid. He said, don't worry. You see, I am also a teacher as a holy man, and my duty is to make sure that there's no violence anywhere. So off he goes, and as he's on his way out of the village, sure enough, this cobra comes up, raises its hood like this, and has a fierce look on its face, its tongue going out like this. And just as it was about to lunge forward and bite, the holy man raised his hand and said, wait. Is it really good to terrorize all these village people? Is it right to terrorize these people? Don't you know? It's not good to be violent. And the cobra says, of course, talking cobra, don't ask how, it's just a story. He says, well, yes, but it's my nature to bite. What else can I do? He says, well, here's what you can do. And he gave him a holy mantra, that is a holy protecting thought that he can repeat and recite. Taught him some meditation, love of God, and all these things. And the cobra, its whole demeanor changed, and the cobra became nice and passive. It became a very, very good snake, repeating these mantras, saying the prayers, see, having a better attitude, not biting anybody. And the last commandment of the man said, now from here on, do not bite anybody. And the holy man went on his way. After some time, the holy man was coming back to that area and wondered, how is my disciple doing? He went to the place where the snake lived, and he looked everywhere. He looked in every hole he could think of. Nothing, no snake was there. So he went back to the village and said, there used to be a dangerous snake that was living here, a cobra. Everybody who walked past that place, the snake would come out, raise its hood, and instantly bite them. What happened to that snake? Oh, yes, they said, there was a snake like that. But we haven't seen him. The last time we saw him, he was just a disheveled, thin thing like a piece of barbed wire sitting in the corner. And we haven't seen him. But maybe if you look under that rock. So he went, looked under the rock, and there was the thinnest looking, like a piece of string, the cobra was. And he opened his eyes, oh master, there you are. And the holy man said, what happened to you? How did you become like this? How did you get into this condition? And the cobra said, well, I followed all your directions. I gave up eating frogs. I became a vegetarian. And then I never bit anybody. But the village boys, understanding my mild nature now, must have taken advantage of me. Some of them took me by the tail and dashed me against the rocks. But I let them do this. because I shouldn't bite them. And then they started throwing rocks and things at me, so I had to hide under these rocks here. But it's not their fault, you know. My nature was to bite, and their nature was to throw rocks. And what did the holy man say? Oh, foolish, 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 foolish snake. I told you not to bite. I said nothing about hissing. So, we should learn when to hiss, but we should never bite. No, as a mature person, you have to evaluate properly, you know, when to issue the hiss. But the biting is malicious and damages the other. The hissing is educational and warns people and serves that you cannot be taken advantage of. You can stand up and use your aggression. The lion is, its job as it were, is to go and bite. And a crocodile, you can't say he has a prohibition. That's its nature. But the point about that is that it's all delivered in harmony. So the oldest surviving animal that we have is the crocodile. You know, and its success is because it's cunning and it's reactive. It has all the equipment to survive all these thousands and thousands of years. Very successful in surviving. But if you ask it any moral questions, is it right to bite or not? I have no idea of morality. Only we have an idea of this moralities. So you control your own violence. By controlling your own inner violence, you automatically control everything else, but it's systematically done. So Arjuna is told, take up your weapons and fight. In other words, exercise your military skill. Who else will do it? Why? For the good of the whole society. If it was to do with your personal land, that's not a moral situation. But for the good of the whole society, you'll do it. Is there moral justification for your war? Yes. Absolutely moral justification for it. Is there a horrendous consequence of it? Is there a justification for a modern war? That's a different question. That's a different question.
What do you mean by a modern war?
Well, a war where you fire a missile off from here and civilians are involved there. See, in the old days, in the days of the Mahabharata, it wasn't like that. It was like a chess game. You had so many people on this side, so many people on that side. If that side was short, you sent people from this side over. That's how we developed the game of chess. So the elephant corps was the castle, and the general was the person that could move all over the board. Feminine, female, queen. Queen can move anywhere. See, Shakti. And then there's the Brahmins, the advisors and so on, these are the bishops. And then there is the knights, that is the chariot corps that can move anywhere, the cavalry. Then you have the pawns, they're the foot soldiers going in advance. And you see in the whole cosmos, Brahman, it's there on the board, Brahman remains. Brahman hardly moves anywhere. There's everything else, it's nature that moves. It's a whole replication, chess is a whole replication of the Vedanta philosophy. So, but you won't play a good game of chess by not making strategic moves. So life is a question of playing the game with strategic moves. With no emotion involvement, other than love, other than the positive emotions going through it. But modern war is not like that. Modern war, indiscriminately, no matter how fine-tuned all the equipment is, and all the great technology, still we find innocent men, women and children massacred. The other aspect of modern warfare is terrorism. And terrorism has as a strategy to affect adversely all the vulnerable members of society. Again, the weaker members of society. So, whether there's a justification for modern warfare is very questionable. But how to defend yourself? You have to defend yourself. Like saying, why should there be a police force? Why should... Now, you find that different religions have a different view on it. So, an eye for an eye and a tooth for tooth, this reciprocal violence is an aspect of Judaism, or was in the former days, an aspect of Judaism, an aspect of Islam. It was not there in Christianity, and yet you'll find in the 15th century, I think it was, maybe 16th century, around the time of Michelangelo it was, that the Pope, the head of most of the Christians in the world, put on armor and went to war and killed people, yeah, to defend the papal states. And their founder said, love your neighbor as yourself and turn the other cheek. If somebody hits you, gives you a blow on here, you turn the other cheek there. They became a violent religion. Hinduism has as its wonderful basis the Mahabharata, where war is encouraged, righteous war is encouraged, according to dharma. And they became mild-mannered people and turned the other cheek. It was a crossover. The Christians became violent, and the Hindus became pacifists.
But what do you do when there's conflict between, if we take terrorists, someone's terrorist and someone else is freedom fighter? Different groups, what is the right thing or the loving thing to do for them is very different than another group, and then there's conflict.
Yes, but how do you evaluate things? You evaluate things on the basis of justice and strength. There's no justice or strength in terrorism. And you may label it freedom fighting. You may think there's a justification for hitting at vulnerable people and call that freedom fighting. But really, would you think there's a justification for killing innocent people?
I don't think...
Do you think that's contributing to the overall welfare and strengthening everybody? See, what does dharma mean? The thing that knits everything into harmony. The thing that creates harmony. Is the universe harmonious? Yes, there's a rhythm to it. But is it violent? Yes.
But then when you have these two groups and one thinks we have to defend our land or our people and these other ones are abusing us and the other group thinks the same.
Yeah, it's because they don't understand that they don't have land of their own. Ramakrishna's example, two brothers fighting. God laughs on two occasions, but the one occasion is when two brothers fight. This is my land. Oh, this is my land. Why is God laughing? My dear children, it's my land. It's not yours. They didn't understand that. As soon as you reduce everything to a material level, all these questions come. And then these dilemmas come. What is moral, what is immoral? As soon as you raise a value and bring out spirituality, it becomes different. You look at things in a different way. As soon as you say, this neighbor of mine has every right to a good living condition. Why? Not just on a social level, subject level, but also underneath it is the divine author of the universe. The Lord of the universe himself stands there. So people don't evaluate these questions in this way. In a secular society, these questions are there. What is moral, what is immoral? And then the question comes as to, are there objective moral values, or are they purely subjective? Or is there some mix of the two? And you can be a theist or an atheist and have both of these values, either of these values. Richard Dawkins is a moral objectionist. He thinks there are objective moral values, because he says religions are wrong and evil. So he's saying there's a moral objective value and religions aren't conforming to it. So are there a set of values like that? So So this Patanjali Yoga Sutras is famous for setting out very simply 5 universal moral values. Don't injure anybody in thought, word or deed. What is the subtlest thing? What is the causal thing in this? Thought. So we can easily reduce it to, don't think any injurious thought toward another. From there, everything else will flow from there. Non-stealing. On the basis of what? On the basis that, yes, society doesn't benefit from it, but what's behind it? Nothing belongs to me anyway. It's a question of greed. And then have this universal value of self-control. Lust. See, Ramakrishna condenses it into 2 key values. What we translate as lust and greed. So for men, he puts in the language of women and gold. You're not saying women are of no value or inferior or should be avoided. No, not saying that. In fact, quite the contrary. Ramakrishna is elevating women to the divine status of divine motherhood. From mere womanhood to divine motherhood. So it's the fact is that there are 2 genetic directives that are driving nature. One genetic directive is propagation of the species. We're not unusual in this. Every organic being has the urge toward it. And then the other aspect is what we call streaming negative entropy on ourselves. That is, making an orderliness out of the confusion by eating and drinking. And what man has done is elevated to an art, a pleasure, an art of pleasure. Saying, I don't just need food, I need very, very sophisticated gourmet food to satisfy my senses. See? I don't just need to procreate, no. I need to derive the greatest pleasure on it based on some values which have nothing to do with the overall society. What the impact is it on everybody else. And then another moral directive obviously is truthfulness. We should tell the truth. What do we mean by tell the truth? Not just in speech, but in thought. What is the highest truth we have? The highest truth we have is the divinity within man. Truthfulness means what is the truth that is enduring? So that's a universal value. And then the last one is translated actually by Swami Vivekananda as kind of non-receiving of gifts. What's the implication of that? A certain independence. If you give me things, then I'm obliged to give it back to you. Give something back to you. Don't surrender your independence. So these are 5 values. Now they're a little more sophisticated than the Judeo-Christian 10 Commandments.
So Swamiji, is the essence of all the religions the same thing?
The essence is the same thing.
The same thing, yeah. But we're perceiving in different forms.
So we're perceiving it in different forms. That's necessary because we're different people. We don't expect everybody to dress the same. We don't expect everybody to speak the same language. We don't expect everybody to have the same taste in food. We don't expect everyone to have the same personality, the same likes, the same dislikes. We're constitutionally all different. For that reason, should we not express the most fundamental urge that we have, that is the spiritual dimension that we have, and do it in a scientific way? Scientific way means that as long as you introduce unthought of dogmas and doctrines which become stifling to us, as long as you have that, either in religion or science, you've stifled open inquiry. So what is sadhana, spiritual practice? Sadhana is making an experimentation with your heart and your mind. Think of it that way. It's not an arduous set of rules, you should do this, you should do that. You should light a lamp. Why should you light a lamp? What's the meaning behind it? Don't say because my mother did it and her mother did it. That's not no reason. Find out what's the value of it. Why should we do it? How did it happen like that? Put some intention into it. 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita tells us this. You put some intention into it. Greater than ritualism is doing something with an understanding. Greater than that is meditation. Greater than that is offering the fruits of all your activities. So, if you draw the line at any one of these things, then you've made a constriction. So should there be something like a science of religion? Yes, of course there should be something like a science of religion. But science itself has become dogmatic. You have to remove that dogmatism from science and from religion. And one of the reasons for the decline of religion, particularly in Europe, is because even from the Vivekananda's time, he makes this point, saying that there are people who are not prepared to inquire fully into things, and religion is as much a science. As soon as religion becomes an open science that can be challenged and questioned on the basis of those people who've made an internal inquiry. So the book of science is the book of life, the book of nature, the book of the external. Now the book of religion is not a Bible or a Veda or any of these things. The book of religion is the mind and the heart. That you have to read and study. And so there are those people who say, yes, I have seen the truth, I have found the truth. I see God. These are what we call mystics. They've gone through the internal experimentation. They've discovered everything there is about the internal world, psychologically and ultimately spiritually. And they say, I know. You say, how do you know? What was your method? Did you do it through a microscope, telescope? Did you see whether God was acid or alkaline? No. These methods are applicable to the external world. But the internal world, we need another method. What is that? It's a psychological method. A method of internal inquiry and a certain spiritual practice that amounts to purifying the mind. That purificatory process is necessary. So you can't be an armchair atheist. You can, of course, but it has no value. You sit there and say, I looked here and I looked there. Khrushchev declared when the first cosmonaut went off into the space, he said, I am happy to declare we were right all along, we atheistic communists. There's no God there. Our cosmonaut, Yuri Gagarin, went up. He looked left, right, up and down. He never saw this old man with a white beard. There's definitely no God. See how they think. Whether he's joking or not, we don't know. But I think he was probably serious. See, the silly understanding. You won't find it on the outside. If you find something on the outside, it won't be God. So some neo-atheists declare, if there is a handwritten note in the sky saying, I am God, I exist, then I'll kind of believe it. But then, those real thinking people, if they see that, they'll say, that's evidence that that is not God. Because what is this thing that religion calls God? We take as this internal entity called the divine self, Atman. This divine entity, this Atman, is the seer, which means it can never be seen. It's the knower, it can never be known. It's a witness, its job is to witness. If it's witnessed, we require another who is the witness. If it's seen, who is the seer that saw it? If it's known, we have to ask who's the knower who knows it. That will be the entity we have to see. So to ask this silly question, really, can you give me evidence of God? Yes, we can give evidence of God. This is in the form of what we call mystics. Those people who had an internal opening and realization. And then were able to express this. And the way they had expressed it is not just verbally, but their whole demeanor changed. Their whole character changed. physically as well as anything else. You see how they used to say how Ramakrishna's skin shone like bronze or like gold, something like that. In fun, Ramakrishna used to make the Holy Mother say, so there's me and this other person, please please make a judgment. Whose skin is lighter? And in fun, she always used to say, you're his skin, not yours. Just for fun. You like that? So it shone. That's why in art we have these pictures with the halos around them. The very vision of God will shine through the very face, shine through the whole body. So this is the science of religion, which is the original subject. But you see, don't make your moral judgments from a secular level. That doesn't work. Secularists will be confused about it. And then you get into debate, is it subjective morality, objective morality? There are cases where there is subjective morality will have to be applied. For the Muslims, is it morally justified to eat pork? No. Is it morally justified for the Christians to eat it? Yes. No problem. Is it morally justified for the Muslim to slaughter innocent civilians? No. Is it morally justified for the Christians to do it? No. Oh, so there's a universal value here. Yes. That's the level we have to operate on. Not the subjective. What is the objective thing? Why do we all agree on this? We all agree on this for a logical reason. It weakens everything. It weakens everybody. So that's how Vivekananda evaluated this morality on the basis of what gives the greatest strength overall. What is the most immoral position? What weakens the overall? What strengthens the overall inclusively? What weakens the overall inclusively? Inclusively means and you. Everybody. I can't say, oh, let's have some tea, and I say, oh, and me. No, when I said let's all have some tea, I was included. I wasn't excluded.